All right, so today I want to talk about sharpness on the Mavic 3. This is something that I keep seeing in groups, people talking about the lack of detail and the lack of sharpness on the Mavic 3, which really isn't the case. And don't worry, this was something that I made a mistake on as well when I had the Mavic 2 Pro, or before I had the Mavic 2 Pro. I thought that the Mavic 2 Pro had a soft image, and I really didn't understand why you had to add post sharpening. So today we're going to talk about the Mavic 3 image and why there's nothing wrong with it and it's doing exactly what it should be doing. Let's get started. What's good, everybody? Ken here. In today's video, we're talking about sharpness on the Mavic 3. Now, it's an easy misconception that you would necessarily want this super sharp image and that sharper images equal detail. And the reality is that's just not the case at all. A good sensor can maintain detail with very minimal sharpness. The perception is that a sharper image is a more detailed image, and that's not always how it works. Now, lenses typically will control the sharpness that you would receive in an image. Here's the deal. Most cameras have the sharpening toned all the way back and allow the user, the end user, add that back into post. Cinema cameras, like these, basically don't have a lot of sharpness, but they do maintain the detail. The detail comes in the form of the lens. And then what I'll do is I'll typically add that sharpness back into post, and it sort of makes that image pop. With the case of the Mavic 3, we have a really wide angle lens. And I think what's happening is a lot of people are using these ND filters and they're not stopping down far enough. They're not shooting at like f4, f5, and in turn, they aren't getting the best possible image that they could. So I shot some clips, periodically, and I've been shooting always above f4, f5 in daylight situations. And I just want to talk about, what that image looks like when we crop into it and what you can do to get more out of that image. So let's go ahead and take a look at this clip here of this building here in Tampa. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go ahead and magnify this by 200%. And I just want you to take a look at this image because it really, to me, looks really good. And we're not comparing it to anything else. We're just focused on this image. I don't care about any other camera, but I want you to take notice of these edges. And the reason why I'm looking at this image specifically is because it has really razor sharp edges. It's a building. And if we look at it, we notice that there's no color shift or weird chromatic aberrations around the edge of this building, which is what you want to see. And because it's a mirrored building, if there was a color shift or crazy chromatic aberrations, you would notice it quite heavily around the edges where it's black. It would almost be like a magenta shift in a sense. Now, we cropped in at about 200%, and there is a little bit of noise. I think I was shooting at about 3200 ISO, so that's definitely forgivable. But overall, this image is pretty damn detailed, if you ask me. Now, we can make this pop. We can get more of that image separation from the background if we just take this into post and just boost a couple of things. Now, we talk about color grading. Color grading takes in form of, making an image from log to a Rec 709, but color grading can also just take that image to another level. And in the case of the Mavic 3 isn't like necessarily the completest image right out of the gate. You do have to do a little bit behind the scenes to make it great, but that's the case for most super expensive cameras. Do you ever watch Netflix and say, wow, damn, that looks amazing? Well, it didn't just come out of camera looking amazing. A lot of times it takes a little bit of post-processing to get there. And that's same with the Mavic 3. So let's take a look at the exposure. The exposure looks to be pretty damn balanced here, but there's a couple of things we can do to just make this image pop a little bit more and provide even more detail and give that perception that the image was sharp right out of the gate. First thing we're going to do is bump up the contrast. And the next thing we'll do is we'll lower the shadows. Shadows are an easy way to sort of fake that an image is sharp straight out of the gate. Now, again, I don't want it to necessarily crush, but we're just going to sort of fake it in a sense. The next thing I'll do is sometimes I'll bring up my highlights a little bit. And then with the Hasselblad color, even though it looks great out of camera, I'll give it a little bit of pop with a little bit additional saturation. So like 115 will be enough for this image. And then I'll go into my creative tab. And this is where you can go ahead and add a little bit more sharpness. And I typically will go ahead and zoom all the way in. And again, we're going 200%. And we're just going to go to this outer edge right about here. And let's go ahead and add about 20% to that. And I don't know if you saw that, but it changed just ever so slightly. So let's go ahead and turn this off, on, off, on. And you can see that the image sort of pops a little bit. And that's all you have to do is just add like that little 20% of sharpness and you're good to go. Now, if you want to get even more technical, you can even go in and add a little bit of vibrance. About 20 is good for most of my work. And you can see, there we go. Let's zoom all the way out and see what this looks like. So here's now, and there's before, and then after. And you can see just that little bit made the world of difference in this image. So it's just that simple. Vibrance, a little bit of post sharpening, and contrast to the Hasselblad color will get you looking just like that. All right, well, let's take a look at a log image, because log images are going to be really flat and sometimes it's really hard to tell the focus. Again, if you are using my creative LUT that I created for this, I have a LUT called the, I guess it's the solid start. And let me go ahead and pull it in here and let me find where the heck I put it. It's bad. I don't even know where my own LUT is, but here's my solid start LUT. And if we go magnify, we'll again go 200%. You can see it looks like crap in the trees. Like it looks almost mushy. But what we can do is we can go ahead again. We can add some sharpening to this. You know, about 20 is pretty good. And you can see like it's hard to tell, but it sort of comes back a little bit. If I uncheck that and check it, you can see, hopefully you can see that there is something happening. It's subtle, but it's happening nonetheless. Again, there is no chromatic aberrations on here and there's no fringing because there is not a crazy amount of digital sharpening on this. But what I'll do is I'll pull all the way out again. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my curves tab. Again, that's how I like to work, but you may have a different workflow. And then again, I am going to just bump up my highlights. And as I bump my highlights up, then I can sort of tune the rest of the image how I want. And it's a very well balanced image, if I had to say. And maybe I want to add a little bit of magenta, or maybe I want to pull it back more towards the greens. It's entirely up to you how that's going to work. Again, this isn't really a color grading tutorial, but this is more or less how you're going to get some of that data back in the image. And again, I'm pulling my shadows down, and look what's happening as I'm pulling those shadows down on the trees. Do you see that? Let's zoom in on that so you can get a closer look at this. So as I'm pulling those shadows down on the tops of these trees, I'm able to get data back into this image. And it's just because, again, when you're in log, you're expanding that image, and sometimes it looks mushy, but once you sort of start pushing and pulling these colors, you're going to get that all back. So here's before, after, before, after. I wish I can shut this piece off here, but let's go ahead and also turn off the creative side. And you can see this is where I added that little bit of sharpness. Hopefully it conveys, but it's a little bit blurry there. And we just add it like 0.20. Now, of course, you can go way up with this and look at what happens when we go way up. Like that's the Autel Evo straight out of the box. Like it looks that shitty and that sharp. It kills me when people are like, oh, the Evo's image is so much better. But I zoom in on it and it looks like shit because there's so much over sharpening happening, so much digital fringing, chromatic aberrations. And it's just because it's the inexperience of the pilot that doesn't understand that that's not natural. That's not natural. If I put that much sharpening on my face, I would look like I'm 90 years old. So, you know, be sort of liberal with it. Again, from the aerial view, you don't need that crazy amount of detail. But anyways, that's a quick and easy way to get some of that detail back into your image. Most all editors have some amount of sharpening. Keep in mind, if you add sharpening to your image, sometimes it can increase the render times that you will see. But again, a good camera is going to get you a portion of the way there. The rest is up to you to get it the remainder of the way. So if you want the best possible image, it's not going to come right off the SD card. We're not quite there yet with cameras. As good as most of them are, if you want the best image, you have to do a little bit more. You got to do some heavy lifting. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully this explains some of the sharpening issues that you may be seeing. Again, DJI may put out an update that allows you to ramp that sharpening up. But until that point, this is what you'll need to do to get the best possible image. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button because the dislikes, they're all turned off anyways. So if you say you don't like the video, I'll never know anyways. But I do appreciate everybody that watches all the content and takes away any bit of knowledge that I can give. And as always, stay original. I will see you in the next tutorial.
I heard they checking for me, no one checking on me, so I had to go run up a check. I got the message on me, ain't no flexing on me, my attorney gon' call and collect. Blessings on blessings for me, my successes only made them envious, they got upset. I had to put all their egos in check. I want the money, the power, respect.